Our next session is a session I'm looking forward to, presented by Katherine, Gorter, Anthony Satrick and Neil Filewood on the Blurred Borders Queensland project that was being developed. I thought it was really important that particularly those of us who work in civil hear about how we can use this to help our clients. To give you a little bit about our speakers, Katherine is the Community Legal Education and Engagement Coordinator at Legal Aid Queensland, where she works to improve people's awareness of their legal rights and responsibilities and how to access legal help. Anthony is a proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander warrior with bloodlines to, and I apologise in advance, the Gunditjmara. Okay, correct me as we're going. Kokopera, Ngunnatjeri, Nawagi, wasn't even close. Waka Waka, and to the Yamp Island peoples of the Central Islands of, I'm gone, sorry, help me out. Torres Strait, we'll go with Torres Strait. Anthony has worked in the community controlled sector and local government, working with families and young people for more than 20 years in remote communities. And Niall is also a proud Neil, sorry. Did I say Niall, did I? My apologies. Is a proud Torres Strait Islander with lineage to the Kalalagaya.
Yeah, close. Kalalagaya.
Thank you. And is the Youth Court Coordinator for Legal Aid, working in the Townsville office. As the Youth Coordinator for the region, Neil provides essential support and services in the youth and children's court spaces in Townsville, with close to 4 years' experience at Legal Aid in various roles. He is also one of 4 Blurred Borders Queensland facilitators and facilitates solo sessions in Townsville and the greater region, and has travelled to accompany other facilitators with delivering sessions for community organisations. Thank you all. I will leave you to an
Just before we start, there is a QR code with a poll on it. You could scan that and sign your life away for me. That'd be really good. It helps Katherine volley for a lot of funding for us. So it's always good. Give everyone a second to do that. I'm actually going to call on Katherine to do the acknowledgement caption today. Surprise. I'm pulling an Edwina.
I'm going to do a short one. It's some words I heard at an important family event I went to a short time ago, and it just went, the grounds on which we walk are ancient, and the people that were there in the beginning remain here still. So I'd like to acknowledge any First Nations people in the room today, joining us online, and of course our speakers, and thank you for having us, and we're just really excited to present and show you what Blurred Borders is all about. Thank you.
Most people have scanned the code. So I'll do a quick session overview. So thank you, Paul, for the introductions. As he alluded to, my name's Neil Filewood, proud Torres Strait Islander. A lot of blood ties to around the Torres Straits and many surrounding islands. I'm Youth Court Coordinator for the Townsville office. So a lot of my work is in the youth court space and the children's court. And I also dabble with a bit of blurred border facilitating as well.
Look, it's good to hear. Anthony Satrick's my name. I'm working up in the King's Region office. I'm doing a lot of work in different sectors, but mainly at the moment we're providing some facilitation around this great toolkit. Anyone in the room heard of Blurred Borders? Can you tell me a bit about it? Because I don't know.
Our CLC has actually done the Blurred Borders course. So it's just a way of, I guess, communicating with people that gives a better idea of what you're talking about, rather than just talking at people and them not understanding you and nodding and going, yes, I do get that. They really don't.
Yeah, great answer. So I think it's a great toolkit to allow people to tell their stories. Every person's story is different, especially when they're trying to navigate around a legal system. I think this work was first brought from the territory over to WA, and then good old Queensland got a hold of it and made it our own. So of course it's going to be a little bit different, but the concept around it is around hearing people's stories, which is really, really important, especially to help people navigate around legal concepts. And most important, that little foreign place of court where a lot of people, and especially Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who we facilitate too, is obviously it's a big need there to ensure that we understand what that process looks like. So lawyers, I think these are all lawyers in the room. I think the most important about is, how do we best support people if you don't know their story? And this toolkit hopefully allows you to hear people's stories.
Beautiful. So we've done our introductions. So we'll quickly run through today. What is the Blurred Borders, as Anthony's just alluded to, what's in the kit. We'll then move on to group activities. We'll probably split the room down the middle. And then we'll go through and Katherine will provide some client impact stories, and we'll have a Q&A at the end for anyone that's interested. If you're too shame, we'll probably be around through your lunch break, so you can approach us as well. Okay. On introductions, everyone's done the poll, very good. So what is a Blurred Borders? Essentially, it's a plain language communication resource tool. So it uses images, which is what you see on the front of the cards, and you'll get to see that today. There's plain language on the back, and the whole idea is to combine those concepts to tell a story. This comes from and we deliver this training from a First Nations lens. However, it's not limited to use with First Nations people. Okay. So the tools cover the bail and criminal process, including youth justice as well, and domestic family violence responses too. So there's 2 kits available. Lovely displays right here. So you've got your family violence kit and your bail and criminal process one, including the youth justice as well.
So I'm just going to hand around some of the story cards so people get a sense of what's
Sorry,
that one. That's family violence cards. This is from the family violence.
So this is what's in the kit. Both kits come with all of these resources. So there's a user manual. There's process maps. Now Anthony really likes the process maps. I'll touch on that.
Yeah, thanks there. The process maps, obviously, they're just different stages to help people's stories. So as lawyers or people or practitioners who are trying to hear stories, when people are in court or going to court or charged by the police, you can actually point them into the stages where they're at and how you're going to best support them. It just gives the client a central parking point to say, well, this is where I'm at. And obviously, as lawyers, you're obviously trying to take them down a process. And sometimes our families or young people don't know exactly what that process looks like. So again, we're using visual platforms to hear people's stories and give them some sort of point of connection there. I really like the process maps. That's just me.
There's also the story cards, which is one of the main selling points of the kit. I guess the whole idea of being able to tell a story and visualize that concept for people is really appealing. You've got the wallet cards as well, and sticker sheets. So your stickers go on the wallet cards. The whole idea of that is to simplify, for example, a bail undertaking, right? You could put condition on the wallet card using the stickers. Okay.
Obviously, communication is probably the big one. Lawyers use jargon, acronyms, things that come out of that funny thing that's law. And then obviously we've got people who are trying to engage in a conversation with lawyers but understand the process. So hopefully by using platforms of visuals, it just helps a better communication tool, which is a gist. On the back of the cards, you'll see some very great plain English language that got done by a really good linguist, is the word, who ensured that the pictures accommodated some sort of language to help use that simple language terms. So yeah, I think that's probably the most important part is lawyers use that great jargon. It's only an audience for lawyers, for magistrates and courts. Then you've got this client, you're trying to take them on a journey. So to ensure that the communication is clear, you've got to try and flip the language to make it simple.
So the cards are broken down into categories or subcategories, as I call them, and they're broken up into colors as well. So you've got orange for people, brown for things that might happen, purple for places, blue for things you can do, pink for conditions and orders, and that light blue teal color for family violence definitions. And then you've got your happy card, which is part of your health and feelings set of cards as well.
Yeah, probably the big one here in this when the work that we do is stories happen, and your job is to get the story from your client, but what you're really trying to help navigate them around what may happen next. So in order for people to understand, it's really what am I going into and what may happen. And us as lawyers, we've got to have that knowledge, not only in law, but most importantly, how do we connect with people in the community? We do our referral pathways, how we're really providing support or solutions to people's problems. Because when you look at one part of people's story, what we're trying to really get into using this card in our stages is try and understand the holistic model of care through a trauma-informed lens. Otherwise, if we're only concentrating on one thing, it may not be the most important thing, even though they're navigating down the court system. Does that make a little bit of sense? So when we break into a scenario, which is going to be a bit of acting, just a little scenario that we're going to do to try and help map out someone's story, and you guys are going to be the practitioners to help us unpack that to make this look a little bit more real. So at the moment, we're just talking that is.
So we're going to play a little video for you. Usually we ask for feedback, but I think because we're crunched on time today, we'll just play it for you. The whole idea of this video is to show you how quick and easy it is to use the kit. A lot of the feedback that the team received during consultation was that lawyers or support practitioners don't have time to sit there and flick through some cards and tell a story. You'll see in this video, the lawyer is able to break down, I think it's 3 or 4 concepts. She uses, I think it's 8 cards to tell a story in about 4 minutes. Okay, so I guess just pay attention to how quickly and easy that process is.
Yes, I think little Jackson goes and meets his lawyer. He got into a bit of a trouble and he helps utilise some cards in the process. But yeah, I get a little bit not concerned, but time gets in the way of relationships, especially in lawyers and people in trouble and who are vulnerable. We've only got short amounts of time. But if I could shift something in your practice and your delivery, it's taken that time to build the relationship, because that's probably the most important thing to the people.
Hi Jackson, thanks for coming in today. As your lawyer, I need to get some information from you. Can you tell me about when you got in trouble with the police?
Yeah, okay. As long as I won't get into more trouble.
No, I'm not here to get you in trouble. I'm going to try to help you, but I do need to know what happened.
So Nick and I got into a fight outside the shops, right? And he started kicking me, so I kicked him back. But it wasn't hard or anything. Then he punched me, but he missed, I think. I was like, well, that's it, so I punched him. But he didn't seem that hurt or anything. But his friends were there, big eye watching. And they were like, gonna get you arrested. So they called the cops and started blaming me for all this stuff. But he started it.
Okay, Jackson, there's quite a lot going on there. I want to make sure that I've got all the details. Do you mind if I use these cards to talk about some of the things that happened?
Yeah. Okay, whatever.
So this card can be you. We can label that Jackson. We'll also need a card for Nick. There was a fight and Nick was the one who got hurt. Then his friends called the police. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't think he got that hurt.
Okay, so then the police arrived and they arrested you. So now I've got a better idea of who was involved and what happened. I can use these cards to explain a bit of the legal processes from here if you like.
Yeah.
So because you were arrested by the police, you're now known as the accused or defendant. The accused or defendant is the person that the police say broke the law. Nick is now known as the victim. The victim is a person who is hurt when someone breaks the law. We can talk about that, but first let's chat about the things you probably heard the police talking about when they arrested you. It's important you understand your rights. So after you were arrested, the police might have said they are investigating.
Yep, they did. But they took me to the police station too.
That makes sense because police think you broke the law. They might try to investigate you. It means they can ask you questions like your name, address and date of birth. They can also search you. But it's important to know that you don't have to answer any other questions. Did they ask you any other questions at the station?
Yeah, heaps. But I told them my name and stuff. I just told them I wanted to speak to a lawyer. I saw that on TV. I won't get into any more trouble for that, right?
No, you won't get in trouble for that. The police tried to question you. Questioning is when they try to ask you more questions or do an interview, but it's okay not to answer any extra questions. This is called using your right to silence. Now we need to talk about what happens at court and that Nick also hit you.
So we see how quickly that conversation is facilitated. three or four different concepts there. So the lawyer discusses the event, which is the altercation between Jackson and Nick, then moves on to discuss what happened with the police and now what Jackson can do forward. I think one of the key takeaways from that scenario is the lawyer is able to remove the emotion from the story. Obviously, when someone's heightened and telling a story, they can digress. They go from point A to point H, and then they're back to B, and they take you down to Y, and then they're back to C. And I guess one of the really good aspects about the blurred borders is using the cards, you're able to really sequentially tell that story in chronological order, which is a big thing for a lot of people. As Anthony said, we're dealing with vulnerable people that may not have the best understanding of how processes work, how the court systems work, how you get from A to Z. I guess one of the big takeaways is using that to really step things out, breaking it down into smaller concepts, using that plain language, making sure your client understands the story that they're telling. I can't count how many times I've told a story and not understood the story I was telling. So that's obviously a big thing as well.
I'm just interested in one question. I won't ask too many because I'm not good at it. But the first question is, did you notice anything in the interaction between the two parties that stood out for you? You can probably put your lawyer hat on and interaction there. And she was doing something really, really important in communication.
It was behind the desk.
Yeah. She sort of removes any element of hierarchy just by being neutral, which is really, really important. Anything else? I'm only going to ask one question, but probably a couple more. Opening questions, very good. Yep, she definitely did. Probably the biggest one for me is she was really good at seeking clarity. He was heightened, he was vulnerable, but she kept bringing him back to a space that she needed to seek clarification. Because if she didn't understand it, she could never move forward. So some of us in our practice, sometimes we already know the end game. Our assumptions get in the way. But really it is trying to heal people's story to make sure that we get the right story to be able to move them through the process. So yeah, that was just a quick one.
Anthony, we have a comment online about how well the conversation flowed.
Yeah, so that's part of that, removing the emotion, I guess, from the story. I mean, you yourselves would know when you're really heightened, you tell a story, you're a bit fidgety, you're jumpy, you can't really gather your thoughts. Putting these cards down on the table, sitting with your client or sitting across from your client and really focusing the attention down on that story helps the conversation flow a lot more. And I get the added bonus of I wouldn't say I'm frontline, but I do get to use the blurred borders with a lot of the young people I work with, the cards. So I've seen it in practice. I've used it in practice where I might have a young person who loves to digress in their conversations and I'm able to bring that back down and really get from point A to B.
Probably the difference between the territory kit and then a WO in Queensland, we come up with some practice guidelines. So in that little snapshot, which is a great little piece of work, she's actually using some practice guidelines to have the conversations, which we haven't got the time to touch over today, but definitely there's a little guiding practice around what's the most important part in it, just to keep you grounded.
Oh, speaking of.
You've done well.
So these are the best practice guidelines. So number one is about putting people and communities first. The whole point of a trauma-informed approach with storytelling is essentially that, and putting the person first. I've got little quotes there. So the blurred borders recently has been evaluated. So the little quotes and comments that you see is some feedback that we received as part of that evaluation. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is mapping out a legal process, story, or concept. Now, I deliver this training to a lot of community organisations that don't specify in law, but they have clients who would dabble and dip their fingers in the justice system. When I explain this guideline to them, I take out the word legal. Essentially, all you're doing is mapping out a process. You're mapping out a story. You're mapping out a concept, a legal concept, right? And what we're going to do in the group activity today is that. So we're going to be looking at mapping out a process or a story. And then guideline number three is using the resource as a plain language communication tool. At its real core, that's what the blurred borders is there for. Okay, that plain language, easy to understand, easy to communicate resource for you to use. It's not the be all and end all. You don't have to take a kit with you every time you have a conference with a client. It's something that you can just hang on your tool belt, keep in the back of your mind. Breaking an activity, doing good on time. We're going to do room. part the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got a choice between 1 and 2. But I'm going to be smart. I'm going to take the smaller group over here because you're
Go
a
on,
little bit bigger. So I'm going
Yeah.
to go with this great team over here. I'm getting the vibe that we're going to learn plenty. I'm going to give you all the answers. Not really. But yeah, I'll take that side of the room. You're going to come with me and Katherine.
Yep.
Next door. We're going to
So-
go and map out story and have some fun and get all the experts in the room to show me how to do it.
So just for the people online, for the next maybe, oh dear, 10, 15 minutes, my engagement with you will be next to nothing, so I do apologise. People in the room, I'll quickly just, Kiara, if you don't mind helping me just move some of these chairs, I'll get you up and standing. I'll just get a little bit. What I'll get you to do, you can just take 2 or 3 cards and pass them around that file for me.
People who are on the edge, if you come across this side so everybody can get out.
Yeah. So, well, we might do it that way. Might fill the stage just a little bit. So while you're hanging around those cards, let's do the activity. What we're going to do, lovely Kiara is going to read out a story. So this is Meg's story that we're looking at. What I'm looking for is, as the story is being read out to you, sorry. You're right. As the story is being read out to you, you might see that one of the cards you're holding is relevant to the story. Now, one of the key aspects of a trauma-informed approach is to not make an assumption when someone's telling us their story or a story. So what we'll do is, as Kiara is reading the story, if you have a card that you think is relevant to the scenario, feel free to pop it down. And if I think you're making an assumption, I'll probably call you out on it. So tread with caution. I've been told that this really amps up family game nights in some households. This isn't Uno, so I'm not looking for you to get rid of all your cards straight away. Like I said, if I think you're making an assumption, I will happily call you out on it. And I'm sure you'll happily argue because you're all lawyers. So it's great. Cool. We'll give a minute to pass it out.
Does anyone have any spare
Yeah,
cards?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Okay.
Good one.
Those two big.
Yours is definitely gonna go, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even, did you do it straight away?
I can't let him get rid of the fuck. And he was like, that's too big, too big, yeah.
You knew.
Cool.
Does anyone need any more? Take this.
This isn't go fish. Nice. All right, so what we're going to do, Kara's going to start in a minute. These are what we call the staging tiles. So the purpose of this is similar to the process map. You have the ability here to zoom in and zoom out certain concepts. Mind my back. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom into the people and family relationship. So that's the first part of the story. That's the first practice guidelines. That's putting people and communities first. So as you hear some names, there should be some cards out there labelled. Feel free to pop them down as they're being told. Okay.
So this is Meg's story. Meg lives in public housing with her 3 kids, aged 12, 10 and 7. They are a happy family with no violence.
Should also preface, when Kiara pauses, that's a good indication of the card.
Sorry. I'm just leaving you to do your thing.
Yep. 3 kids, happy family. Yep. Got Meg.
This gotta be.
Got 2. Hopeful. Hopeful. What are we hopeful for? At this point.
The family.
That it continues.
I don't know that I wake up every day to my screaming children and feel hopeful, but
Sounds happy.
we're happy. We've got a happy one. I don't know about hopeful. There's not much in the story to be hopeful for so far.
Do you want me to take it back?
Take it back.
I'll leave
Sorry to
I'll
start.
leave it to your
That's
interpretation.
nice.
Leave it to your interpretation. Who put the strength card down?
Well, things that are good for you, say on the back. So
Yeah.
I think a happy family with violence free is really good for you.
Very good. I'll take that. Cool. There is one more card I'm looking for.
It's Larry.
Have we mentioned Larry? I think we've got Meg and
Larry's one.
3 children.
Assume Larry.
I don't
Is there a
remember
Meg
Larry
card?
being brought up.
There is a Meg card.
There is
there.
one
Oh,
more.
yeah.
Can I look at the-
Yeah.
So they're a happy family with no family violence. Properly. Maybe I'm missing a card. Okay, that's okay. We'll skip through. That's fine. Minor, it's no family violence.
Oh,
Literally, yeah,
oh.
that's okay. Minor details.
Meg gets support on occasions from a psychiatrist who talks to her about her feelings.
You sure?
Well, like on this.
Yep. Good.
Meg is healing from trauma because of her lived experience of domestic violence by her ex-husband, Larry. I shouldn't have said that positive, but I was happy for you.
Larry can go. Oh. Are we still staying in?
No, so we're still focusing on people. Yep, so that's the only tile we're looking at the moment. Yep. And there should be something to do with trauma out there. Yep. Cool. Yep.
Meg requires an interpreter as English is her second language. So Meg has a DVO order that says her ex-partner Larry must.
So sorry, I'll just
Sorry.
pause there.
Yeah.
So we'll zoom out of the people now. So now we'll look at this order. Thank you.
The conditions in one.
Yep.
So the DVO order says that her ex-partner Larry must stay away from her and the kids, stay away from some places, not use a computer or phone to start trouble online,
Okay, overachiever.
and not ask someone else for help to break the rules.
Sure. Sure.
And then are we moving to event now?
Let's start asking. So we're now zooming. I like to zoom in and out a lot. So we're zooming out of the order now. We're going to zoom in onto the event.
Meg's job makes her happy as she works with a group of women who are a good support network.
That can go to event. Yep. Thank you.
One day, Meg's boss, John, asked her to do something sexual that made her feel scared.
Sexual violence.
You want to read the back for me?
When you do something sexual that someone does not want and you made them feel shame, upset or scared. It can be physical, using words, sending sexy photos, videos online, making someone watch sexual things. Can happen between two adults and kids, partners and other family members.
So I'll throw that to the room. We
Yeah.
class that as
Yeah.
sexual. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What I'll do,
Yeah.
I'm going to chuck this right on John so we can name and shame today.
John then starts to send Meg sexual texts that make her feel ashamed and upset. John keeps sending sexual text messages to Meg.
It's getting worse. Yep. We're going. So it's definitely getting worse.
On one occasion, John promised Meg additional work if she did something sexual. Meg refused.
Starting to see some red flags in this. Many different layers. Very good. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Sometime later, Meg starts to get worried as her boss started to reduce her work hours every week. Meg feels it's getting worse.
That's good too. I'll do that. Cool.
Yeah, very.
Very quick. All right, cool. So as we see here, there's a lot of layers. Practitioners, myself, lawyers, a lot of the time, and a lot of what I see is we're at this stage, right? And there's this whole story that's happened, all of this trauma that poor Meg's going through. Or, you know, you might meet someone here, especially if they're getting sexually harassed at work. This is where you might interact, not really understanding or not really knowing or being privy to the other layers of that story. And not many clients, especially, and I shouldn't generalize, but not many clients in this position are willing to be forthcoming with all of this story, right? They just want help on the one thing. They don't want to tell you that, you know, I'm being sexually harassed at work, but I also have a DVO against my ex-partner, and I'm also healing from trauma, and I have a psychiatrist, and I do this, and I do that, right? So that's a lot of things that poor Meg, who's one person, is going through. And that's something that at any point you might interact in that story, right? So we'll zoom out of all that now. Now we're going to be looking at being hopeful. We're going to look at things that Meg can do. Put that down now. So we're starting to get hopeful. What are some things that Meg can do at this stage? There's one screaming answer. There we go. Got about 20 in the room. Yeah. 2 words there. Yep, she can plan for safety. Absolutely. What else can she do? Some more things out there. Very good. Yep, counsellor, social worker, she got the police. Focus on her strengths. What's one of her biggest strengths, especially at the workplace? Something that was discussed in the story.
Oh, her, the women.
Yep,
you work
the
with.
women she works with. Absolutely. Yep, an extra support person.
Also shown strength in that she said no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Has run the risk of
So she's
losing
got-
work.
She's got the capacity, whether she can maintain it without being threatened
Yes.
and something worse happening.
Absolutely. What else? I don't even know what cards are out there. What's out there? There we go. Yeah, well, she can't really go choke with John at this point. No, I don't. No. I would say that's not ill-advised. Yep, she focused on goals. Yeah. Do you want to read the back of that for me? We'll have a look at it.
Say and do things that make someone feel shame, no good, upset or scared, including blaming someone unfairly, killing names, or telling someone they're no good. Know something that makes someone scared or worried. I think she plan.
So I'll throw that out to the room. Do we think there's a bit of emotional abuse from the boss there? Yep, absolutely. Should have studied these cards before this. Yeah, maybe she's feeling sad. If she's feeling sad, we could pop that down. She might be feeling isolated. I know that many people would be forthcoming to their colleagues if they're being sexually harassed, especially if there's a risk of losing work or gaining a reputation. A lot of layers to that, right? And obviously that's just me making an assumption, which I've told you all not to do, but here we are. Cool. So I'll zoom out of that now. Now we're going to look at types of violence. Okay. So there might be, but there might be some cards out there. At the back, there is a light blue family violence definition. Now. I'm just writing it.
I think we're just putting it down. Oh, we're just checking it. Yeah, I think it's just general violence. Is this just for general violence or the scenario?
Yep, general violence, yep. Make assumptions, yeah, the right and center is happening.
Advising on every type of violence. Let's do this.
Random. Okay. Can I please get you to read the back of that one? And then when she's done, if you don't mind reading the back of choking.
Physical violence, things like choking, hitting, kicking, biting, throwing something at another person, hurting someone with a weapon.
Choking, strangulation. This means pressing on someone's neck and stopping their breathing. If you choke someone, they might be badly hurt, maybe they'll die. The law says you must not do this. It's a very serious kind of violence.
So you'll notice there that we've got physical violence, which is a general description of physical violence. And then we've given choking its own card because of the serious nature of it. Not to say that the other forms of violence are not serious. And then what we've done with these cards is you'll notice some of them are left face up. They're your regular, schmegular violence cards. And then you've got these ones here with the red flag on the back. During the consultation phase in 2023, originally we had the red cards on the front. Now, what do you think is going to happen when you're dealing with someone that's going through a lot of trauma? Yep, absolutely.
Like the major red flag. And
Absolutely.
Then spiral.
Absolutely.
Thinking to yourself.
Either that or they might shut down completely, right? The engagement might be gone, the walls might be up. All of a sudden they might feel that you're making an assumption that they're the red flag, right? It's obviously not what we want to do when we're applying a trauma-informed approach. Okay, cool.
Also, I think a lot of those red flag ones are kind of insidious, whereas these are so obvious and I think it's kind of commonly accepted. Whereas someone who has been threatened or stalked or might not feel like there might be a lot of shame attached to it.
Yeah. A lot of the conversations that might get thrown around is, oh, well, he didn't choke me, he just had his hand on my neck, or she had her hand on my neck. So using the cards, having the red flag on the back, is for you as a practitioner to identify that that's a really serious thing. Obviously, by nature, it's your bread and butter. But that's a key indicator for you to, you might have to digress, might be a little bit more of a sensitive topic, right? Cool. So what do we think of that whole process of mapping out? I mean, we've used 5 tiles and almost 52 cards. So obviously there's a lot of layers to anyone's given story. As Anthony alluded to earlier, no 2 stories are going to be the same, right? The next person that might have a similar story, maybe they don't have an order in place. Maybe they haven't gone that far. Maybe the police haven't been involved. Maybe they don't have a psychiatrist or psychologist, right?
Oh, sorry, you go, Jill.
No, that's right. I was just wondering if when using the cards of the client might use the cards themselves, like choose cards and say like it sort of goes back and forth. Does that happen?
I experience that with a lot of the young people that I work with.
Yeah.
Young people by nature are curious.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started carding the cards around, I would just leave them on the table as an option. And one of the very first conferences I ever held with a young person using the cards, left them there, was going through material, and they had actually grabbed the cards and went, "Oh, Uncle Neil, what's this?" Started just flicking through. We're going to get to there, and as I was reading out the material, he's just flicking through the cards and going through. So a lot of the time that happens. Edwina, who's head honcho of Blue Borders, she has this fantastic story of a young lady in Territory. And what had happened was she had an order that told her not to go to a certain park. So as they're reading out this order to her, her lawyer was reading it out. She identified that there was a card, I think it was the no family violence one. So as they're reading out the order, she flipped through the deck, pulled that one out, put it on the table. The lawyer's gone, "Oh, why have you put that down? This isn't about family violence. This is about you breaching your orders." And she goes, "Yeah, like I know I can't go to this park, but when mum and dad kick off, when there's family violence in my house, that's my safe space," right? So they were able to advocate because that young lady had the initiative, I guess, to find that card and point that out as part of her story, which is an element that maybe doesn't get discussed.
Yeah.
So I've seen it, any time that I lay 4 cards down, by the end of the conference, a young person's put 7 other cards down next to it, right?
Yeah.
And you tend to digress. At any given point telling a story, you can probably stop, branch off, tell a whole new story, go to the next one, branch off, right? I guess that's the versatility of the Blue Borders.
I just want to check this card. Would it be the situation, say, where you're explaining orders like park or home and use the card as like a no indication, or is there a use?
There's no right or wrong way to use a Blue
Yeah.
Borders. It's open to interpretation. One of the only things I recommend, especially with the crosses, is trying to avoid double negatives. Right? Obviously, that's the plain language concept of double negative. The one way that I give an example of is I had a young person I was dealing with, and we were talking about, I was doing his antecedents, talking about how his home life was. Right? And I'm saying, you know, we're going to do a really sensitive conversation here, had the ticks and crosses down, because I knew that, well, he had advised that there was history of family violence. And so I'm using the family violence cards and I'm going, Mum and Dad ever done this, right? Yes, put it on the tick. No, I'd put it on the cross. So that would help me build a foundation of what's happening, what's not happening. I can get rid of those cards. We'll focus on these. Another way I've used it is I've helped lawyers explain what happens if you plead guilty or not guilty. So you plead guilty, this are the things that can happen. That's the tick. These are the things that are out of the picture now. You plead not guilty, tick might be going to trial, vice versa. Right. So it's open to interpretation. There's no right or wrong way. I would just recommend trying to avoid double negatives. That's really hard concept to understand, even for me. And this is my bread and butter.
A lot of the advice we give is over the phone.
That's true.
And we have actually moved away from face-to-face advices. And we were at one stage prior to COVID developing advice clinics in regional areas in southeast Queensland. So we had one at Nala, Woodridge and Ipswich. And we've moved away from that. This looks great. It seems to me to be a very personal sort of approach where you move back to face-to-face. Is there a way of adapting it for telephone? I personally think this is very effective. I like the colours, but with over the phone.
And obviously that's going to create barriers of its own.
That's right.
I think one of the main ways that you could make use, and again, it's up to you if you want to disclose over the phone. Look, I have this resource I'm using on the end. It's going to help me understand your story. You may not have to have that conversation. It might just be you simply reading off the plain language on the back.
All right.
So you might just give context and say, okay, we're going to discuss this. And then for you as a practitioner, that's when you'll use that language on the back.
So one of the, and I think also some clients have actually, because we in civil law provide advice across the state, not going to be able to do face-to-face. Does it work with video if we're able to get a client to come into a regional office and link with them through video?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of laying it on the card.
And is that something where the regional office would have the cards and we could have the cards in there with the client?
Most regional offices should have a kit.
Yeah, so particularly like Townsville and Cairns, because or Campton, that's where our we have a facilitator base, so they have cards in the head office there. I think as we probably, I know that Woodridge have been using the cards, I believe, like in the Wilson, Ipswich and Nala. So we're still kind of like at the moment, anywhere like Townsville.
How many kits are available?
So there's 2 kits. So we've got family violence and then family.
I meant numbers like how many to a division, like to a team, like.
The way we do it is every single team, so like not just family, it's like with each subcategory within family, are entitled to like 1 for each. And then if you want more, usually just the principal lawyer will just reach out to us and then we just go through our approval process, just to make sure. So obviously we have like budgets and stuff that we have to adhere to, but it is great to have one set of kits, like of each type. Telling me to shut up. Yeah. In each like kind of team, because it does have like you can be applied across multiple things like crime and family and civil. Yeah.
And I think with Paul, we were working on some video links with regional officers for advices. If we were going to, if that's going to get as far as we're hoping, this being available in the room depends on the matter being discussed. This would be very helpful. But are you also thinking of developing it for civil law matters like the NDIS? I could see it being really useful for the NDIS.
Yeah. I've got a non-verbal son, and that's the first thing that came with the PEC system and the pictures. So it's very applicable to that. I think that with Paul, there is chats at the moment of adapting a specific civil one, but once again, it's just budget, so we're just waiting for end finance.
Because I think we would be interested in adapting it within social security or NDIS or, with debt too.
Yes, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
Yeah, especially with like people not comprehending and understanding.
I think at the moment,
something.
and also with disaster, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
floods and things.
So it's definitely a conversation that's being had. But yeah, if you do want to have a set of kits, just send an email to the CLE box and we'll make sure.
Alright.
It's just, yeah.
We should run out of cards.
I understand. But I'm worried they may.
Oh, most of them, yeah.
Or they say, when they get.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, it's very much if you use.
Because everything likes what.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I remember you going up.
And one.
One, eh? We went overboard. That's how deadly we were. You lie. They don't pay us that much for us to go shake a leg for the conference.
Kelly, why you finish off the thing? I'll jump in on it. You happy with that?
Yeah, all good.
Long
Yeah. I think we're good for time.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll move on. So just in the interest of time, we'll just quickly push through. I know you're all having a blast. Listen to us yap. Yep, so I'll hand over to Katherine. She'll give you some client impact stories about Blue Borders.
So just for context, Blue Borders has been around for about 12 months. And so we've been doing training sessions in that time. We've actually trained over 1,000 people, 96 sessions from like Bamaga down to the Gold Coast. We've been everywhere. And so DJAG funded this project, and as part of this project, they wanted us to do an external evaluation. So we've had an external consultant come in and do some interviews with people who've been using the kit with clients. So that's lawyers, support workers. And we've seen the draft report, and we're already seeing client impact stories being shared about how the resources are having a positive impact on clients. So there's about 8 stories in the report. I just thought I'd share a few. I don't have a lot of light here, so I'll do my best reading. But the first one is about how the cards have helped prevent unjust imprisonment. So the case study is we had a lawyer who had tried for months to take instructions from their client and couldn't because of a language barrier. And everything was being done by video link in this situation. They're having a lot of difficulty taking instructions, so they've reached out to a First Nations worker and they put together a pack of cards for a conversation. Now, the cards were to explain the difference between guilty and not guilty and what they meant and which avenues would follow. So when they started the conference with the client wanted to plead guilty. But when they unpacked that and explained a little bit about what that meant, it was very clear that the client said, I didn't do what I'm being accused of. But they didn't understand the difference between not guilty and guilty. So once they unpacked that and made it very clear, they were like, no, I want to plead not guilty. They didn't agree with what was being alleged against them. So they went to court and they won. So that's an example of someone understanding the situation not just saying yes to get a legal matter over and done with and getting a really good outcome, being found not guilty. The next one is reducing reoffending through understanding DVO conditions. So this is another example from a First Nations worker where they've said, I've used the stickers from the kit for one of my young clients with a brain injury. The clients had a lot of trouble understanding their DVO order and what a breach was. I was able to use the stickers to say, don't see this person in public, at home, anywhere. And they also had a thing about wanting to see their child, and as part of their conditions, they weren't allowed to see their child. So the client had been repeatedly calling the lawyer, like wanting to understand, what are my conditions? What are my conditions? By having these stickers on the wallet card, they had this little tool that they could refer to, and they stopped contacting the lawyer and they weren't breaching their DVO. So that's a positive outcome for that client. The next one was opening up communication and enabling a lawyer to help a client. So this case study is about a young First Nations client so shy that they couldn't speak. I gave them the cards to use, knowing there was a cultural barrier, particularly as a victim of abuse. Communication was still really difficult. We struggled to get instructions, but the cards gave the client something to do with their hands. And they were able to prompt a conversation to help them communicate more than I need help or I want to go home. In the end, they were able to get meaningful instructions from the client and help as much as possible. And the fourth one, improving a client's safety by continuing to engage in a legal process. So this was a client with high trauma, and the lawyer was struggling to get her to calm down and understand that there were restrictions on what happens at court on that day. She was trying to explain to the client they could only deal with this part of the legal puzzle today, not all the future steps. So the client wanted a DVO. Using the cards and the concepts, the lawyer was able to say, we can talk about what else needs to be done. I can help you with the affidavits and help the judge understand what you're going through. The client wanted an extension of a protection order. She wanted it there and then, but it couldn't be done on that day for a lot of reasons. The whole thing took a couple of months, but we were able to keep the conversation going and we were able to keep the client persisting through the process, which it became very evident she did actually need that protection order. So how am I going for time? Yes, good.
That's me saying 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll just really quickly share a couple of other things. There was also a child protection example where there was a client who had significant trauma and complex mental health issues. That means she had trouble absorbing and retaining the information she was being told by her lawyer. So in that scenario, they mapped out some story cards to explain what had happened and what was going on and what needed to happen. And she was at risk of losing custody of her child. So by using the story cards, they were able to tell her, this is what you need to do, this is what you can't do. And because the client was worried about remembering all that, they just took a photo. And her caseworker kept referring the client to that photo, and the client was able to follow the conditions because she understood by looking at the images, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, and she retained custody of her child. So it's things like that. Using these story cards is having a big impact already, and we're just so excited to hear this. So just a quick summary of what we're seeing out there already. That's it for me.
I think we're nearing the end. Q&A. Any questions, thoughts, comments, feedback? Sick of hearing me yap yet? How we going? Like I said, if you're too ashamed to ask now, Anthony and I, Katherine and Kiara will be around to your lunch break, so feel free to approach us. Very approachable characters for you.
Sure.
Question. Cool. So next steps, I'll just briefly run through it. I think Ed wanted us to run through the website.
Yes. Do you have that loaded?
Technology.
Didn't say yes, but I'm sure the answer is no. The answer is no, Katherine.
Okay, so we'll just quickly bring up Google.
So there's enough times I shouldn't. Quick and easy Google search at this day and age.
There is a link, a shortcut I'm not going to take over.
No, please.
There is a shortcut to Blurred Borders off the Legal Aid website. So I'll just show you in case you're navigating there. So this is the Legal Aid homepage. If you scroll down, here it is here. If you're looking for, or you can just Google, which I do. But this is sort of where we're putting all our resources and information about the training, the kits. So any training sessions we have coming up for our 2-hour sessions, we list under the free Blurred Borders training. And the next ones we've got are 25th and 26th of March. So you can register there. That's all free. It's a 2-hour session and it expands on some of the things we've discussed today. There's actually usually 3 activities in training session and they're all hands-on. You get to use stickers, which are usually very popular. And about Blurred Borders is just a bit of information about what's in the kit, the different categories of the cards and the types of clients you can use it with. And there's like our overview brochure there. How to use the resources. This one's important. It has the best practice guidelines that we talked about earlier. Now down here, this is some really good tools. Practical tips for using the story card. So we just refer people who've done the training, just sort of these key reminders about how you can get the most out of using the cards with clients. There's a bit of a explainer here for what makes up the story card. So the image on the front and some instructions in plain English on the back about the information. Now, just to be clear, so the information on the back of each card was adapted from WANT to Queensland law by talking to in-house people, by doing external consultation with First Nations organisations, community organisations across Queensland. And then we went to a linguist who distilled it right back to really simple concepts. They're a cue, and mostly a cue for people who don't have a legal role like a support worker. So you don't have to use that exact wording. It's a guide, it's a cue for people who need it. What I wanted to flag is on the website, we've got these common story card layouts. So we're building on this library now, but for example, a DV order conditions layout, so on here, we've got lots of examples of how you can lay the cards out to talk through a scenario with your client. So we're building on these. So down the track, we'll add some civil ones. Yeah, but here's an example of explaining DVO conditions that you could use with the client to explain what's happening and what they need to do and what happens next. No, that's the main thing. Oh, to order more resources. Okay, I'll flag here that if you come to training and your organisation hasn't been before, you get a set of free kits. But if you want additional kits, we do charge for that. It's purely cost recovery. We're just recovering the printing costs. So you can order the full kits or you can order the stickers and the wallet cards. And we've now literally in the last couple of days just added the story cards on there to be ordered separately if you just need extra sets of cards. So, and we're just going to keep adding resources onto here. So it's a great site for you to use if you do use the cards.
That's everything. There is a final poll. We are one of those people, so it gets you to do 1,000,001 polls. One of the really good things about this one, though, is there is a question there that prompts you to suggest some cards for a civil set of cards, civil set work orders. So that would be really good if you could do that and fill that out. I think that is everything.